I was raised in affluent Brooklyn, just outside Boston. The zip code screamed success and power. But where my parents lived, success wasn't a feeling, it was a performance. Everything was about the optics, the perfectly manicured lawn, the antique furniture, the illusion of perfect bliss. My father, Harold, was a prominent corporate lawyer. My mother, Elizabeth, was a socialite and the head of several major charity committees. They were the pillars of the community, admired for their relentless pursuit of high society status. Their real product wasn't law or charity, it was image. Our family wasn't a haven, it was a brand. Every action, every public smile, every strategic donation was designed to solidify that brand. Love was conditional. It was a tool, a payment for conformity. And I, the daughter, was simply a supporting prop in their elaborate theater. The house was magnificent, yet always cold. Affection was scarce, genuine conversation non-existent. We didn't share feelings, we shared critiques. So when they finally delivered that devastating line at my graduation dinner, was I really shocked? Or was it just the official public confirmation of a truth I'd always known? My name is Michelle Harris. I'm 34, and I'm a tour guide. This was supposed to be the moment. The cap and gown photo, the proud toast. I earned the highest honors in my class, but my parents weren't there for the speech. They were only there for the dinner. Instead, amidst the clinking glasses at my private graduation dinner, my father raised his wine glass not for applause, but to deliver the cruelest line of my life. "We wish you were never born." The 7 words landed like daggers, not whispered, but spoken with icy, elegant finality. The entire restaurant fell silent. Every eye turned to me, waiting for the predictable collapse. But did I cry? Did I finally break? From childhood, my success wasn't a conclusion. It was just a precursor to the next demand. Every achievement I brought home was examined under a microscope, never celebrated. It's good, but the second-place trophy next to it means you could have done better. My wins were simply proof of potential, not pride. I learned quickly that the only way to earn their brief, transactional attention was through flawless performance. But even perfection was dismissed as expected. I wasn't their daughter, I was the family's perpetual project, the one they invested in but never actually saw or loved. I constantly lived in the shadow of their impossible expectations. Law, medicine, finance, anything less than those noble paths was treated as an embarrassment. The pressure became a heavy, crushing blanket. It made me desperate to choose a life that was authentically mine, even if it meant triggering their final, fatal rejection. My parents had mapped out my life, law at Harvard, an MBA from Wharton, or maybe a prestigious surgical residency. The choices were narrow and suffocating. I desperately needed air. Then I founded a program focused on tourism and historical guiding. It was the first time I felt true, unscripted curiosity. This path wasn't about status or wealth, it was about connection, discovery, and telling the stories of the world. It ignited a soul I thought was long dead. I realized my passion lay in leading others, not managing spreadsheets. It was everything their cold, stiff world was not: vibrant, authentic, and human. I knew telling them would be the declaration of war, but I was ready. I chose my own peace over their perpetual approval. When I told them I was pursuing tourism, their reaction wasn't anger, it was cold, surgical ridicule. My father, Harold, gave me that lawyer's stare and simply said, "A tour guide. That's utterly useless, Michelle. We expected you to manage empires, not carry a flag." The attack wasn't just on my career, it was on me. My mother critiqued my clothing, too casual, my hair, my weight. I realized they needed me to be perpetually flawed so they could maintain control. If I was perfect, they would have no leverage. I was told my circle of friends was unacceptable. They demanded I cultivate relationships purely to benefit the family's social standing. Friendship, for them, was a transaction, a business deal. They taught me that love was leverage and relationships were tools. Their standards were not just high, they were intentionally unreachable. But their judgment didn't break me, it clarified my path. I had to leave. They cut me off financially immediately. Fine. I took on double shifts waiting tables and spent every spare hour buried in my tourism texts. I had to build my career from the ground up, without their dime or their approval. My fuel was pure, stubborn self-reliance. While my peers enjoyed lavish student lives paid for by trusts, I was gaining real-world experience. I guided small local tours for free, just to hone my voice and skills. That practical knowledge was worth far more than a law degree from Boston University. It was my unseen, powerful advantage. Every dollar I earned, every positive review I received, felt cleaner, more legitimate than all the inherited wealth in the Thompson bank accounts. I was no longer striving for their validation, I was building a life I genuinely respected. That internal shift was the real start of my revenge. Despite juggling school and shifts, I crushed it. I was ranked first in my program, a huge win built purely on my own grit and sacrifice. This was the kind of academic validation any parent would boast about. But my parents, they found a way to turn the gold medal into lead. When I told my father the news, expecting at least a flicker of pride, he paused. His only response, delivered in that icy lawyer's tone, "That career is beneath you." Not congratulations, but a reminder that my true passion was merely an unworthy hobby. My achievement was invisible. It was a complete rejection of my path. It wasn't about the major, it was about the control. They couldn't stand that I had found happiness outside their strict framework. To them, my victory was a defeat for the Harris family brand, and they made sure I felt the sting of that failure. I learned the hard truth. Their approval wasn't just elusive, it was non-existent. My achievements would always be worthless because I was worthless in their eyes. This realization was a turning point. Why beg for a drop of water when I could build my own ocean of self-worth far away from them? But there was one person who understood the true value of my fight. One person who never stopped seeing my light. My anchor in that storm was my grandmother, Evelyn. She was my father's mother, yet entirely outside their cold, transactional orbit. Where Harold and Elizabeth saw a disappointment, Evelyn saw potential and resilience. She saw me before I even knew who I was. When my parents cut off my tuition, Evelyn stepped in. She didn't lecture, she invested. She saw my tourism degree as an investment in my soul, not their brand. She gave me the support to leave the waiting job and focus on my studies. Her help was always unconditional and freely given. Evelyn didn't just support me financially, she watered my passion. She asked about my field research, listened to my tour stories, and celebrated every small discovery. She taught me that true value is found in the connection to the world, not the size of the inheritance. Her quiet belief was a louder affirmation than my parents' loudest criticisms. Evelyn was my proof that family can be defined by choice and kindness, not just blood and judgment. She showed me what a healthy relationship truly looked like. She gave me the emotional blueprint for freedom. Without her support, I truly believe I would have collapsed under my parents' toxic weight. Her love was the foundation. It allowed my dreams to grow and prepared me for the final confrontation. With Evelyn's unconditional trust, I finally allowed myself to flourish. The crushing weight of my parents' judgment was gone, replaced by light. I dove headfirst into field research, graduating with high honors. My mind, once paralyzed by fear, was now free and powerful. I was building a reputation based on merit, not money. I became a growing, respected voice in the historical tourism community. For the first time, my achievements felt real and earned. Not something inherited or transactional, but something authentically mine. Evelyn became my best friend and most trusted advisor. She taught me that the best form of success is internal peace, not external approval. Her quiet support was the opposite of my parents' aggressive, judgmental silence. She prepared me for a life where I could be powerful and kind. My dreams were growing, but I knew my parents saw my happiness as a personal slight. My joy was their defeat. The final showdown was coming, but thanks to Evelyn, I no longer needed their love. I was ready to demand my freedom. Then, the foundation cracked. Evelyn, my anchor, passed away a year before graduation. The world felt silent and dangerously cold without her light. The only person who saw my true worth, who believed in my non-traditional path, was suddenly gone. I was truly alone again. Without Evelyn's buffer, the parental criticism intensified, now laced with self-pity. We're the only ones left who care about your reputation. They used guilt like a weapon, pushing me harder towards the finance path, claiming Evelyn's money was wasted on my little tours. I channeled my grief and anger into my work. I didn't just graduate, I earned the top student honor and the highly coveted commencement speaker invitation. This wasn't just a win for my career, it was a loud, independent statement to my parents: I excelled despite you, not because of you. My rational mind told me to stop expecting anything from them, but the small, childish part of me clung to one final hope. I invited them, knowing the speaking invitation would appeal to their need for prestige. Maybe, just maybe, the world's applause would finally force their approval. I spent weeks obsessing over the details, not of the speech, but of their reaction. Would they show up? Would they smile? Would they finally say, "We're proud of you"? Every phone call went unanswered. The tension was a physical knot in my chest. The graduation was becoming a fateful battlefield. I also secured a dream position at the prestigious Bowman Institute in Seattle. I was building my exit strategy, preparing to cut the cord permanently. I was ready to celebrate alone. Deep down, I was mentally preparing to walk out of their lives the moment they inevitably failed me one last time. They finally agreed to a private pre-graduation dinner. I chose the fanciest restaurant they loved, a final attempt to appeal to their material vanity. This was my last offering of a truce, my final extension of hope. It was where everything would either heal or spectacularly explode. I walked into that restaurant the night before graduation, not seeking love, but anticipating the final battle for my soul. Even with my diploma secured and my job waiting, the anticipation of seeing them cause physical pain. Visits home were exercises in psychological warfare. I'd have to pull over on the interstate just to manage the panic attacks, all triggered by the simple thought of their sneering faces. Their constant, subtle sneers and microaggressions left emotional scars. They didn't need to yell. Their disappointment was loud enough in their silence. It was a humiliation ritual. They made sure I knew, right up to the very end, that my self-made success was just a joke to the Harris family. I knew the invitation to the dinner was pointless, yet I still dressed meticulously, hoping my polished exterior would somehow soften their hearts. I clung to the hope that my final, greatest achievement, my graduation speech, would somehow, miraculously, earn their approval. It was an addiction to a toxic fantasy. My father used the entire dinner to talk about my cousin, who had just been accepted to Yale Law. Their conversation was a masterclass in intentional exclusion. I was paying for this meal, yet I was treated like the waiter. The injustice was suffocating, setting the stage for the final, public blow. I thought I was strong enough to absorb their toxicity, to leave with dignity. Then my father picked up his glass for what I assumed was the required, fake toast. The entire restaurant waited. The music stopped. Every eye was on the great Harold Harris and the daughter he was about to reluctantly bless. To Michelle, who finally graduated, and to Honesty, we wish you were never born. The words were deliberate, a lawyer's brutal closing argument. Every scar I had ever collected from them suddenly burst open. It wasn't rejection, it was an act of emotional annihilation. I wasn't hurt because it was new. I was hurt because in front of the world, they confirmed the toxic truth I'd spent my entire life trying to disprove. This was the final, undeniable proof they didn't just disapprove of my choices, they despised my existence. The choice was simple: collapse or rise. I felt a surge of cold, powerful rage. the crying Michelle was dead. Even with my diploma secured and my job waiting, the anticipation of seeing them cause physical pain. Visits home were exercises in psychological warfare. I'd have to pull over on the interstate just to manage the panic attacks, all triggered by the simple thought of their sneering faces. Their constant, subtle sneers and microaggressions left emotional scars. They didn't need to yell. Their disappointment was loud enough in their silence. It was a humiliation ritual. They made sure I knew, right up to the very end, that my self-made success was just a joke to the Harris family. I knew the invitation to the dinner was pointless, yet I still dressed meticulously, hoping my polished exterior would somehow soften their hearts. I clung to the hope that my final, greatest achievement, my graduation speech, would somehow, miraculously, earn their approval. It was an addiction to a toxic fantasy. My father used the entire dinner to talk about my cousin, who had just been accepted to Yale Law. Their conversation was a masterclass in intentional exclusion. I was paying for this meal, yet I was treated like the waiter. The injustice was suffocating, setting the stage for the final, public blow. I thought I was strong enough to absorb their toxicity, to leave with dignity. Then my father picked up his glass for what I assumed was the required, fake toast. The entire restaurant waited. The music stopped. Every eye was on the great Harold Harris and the daughter he was about to reluctantly bless. To Michelle, who finally graduated, and to Honesty, we wish you were never born. The words were deliberate, a lawyer's brutal closing argument. Every scar I had ever collected from them suddenly burst open. It wasn't rejection, it was an act of emotional annihilation. I wasn't hurt because it was new. I was hurt because in front of the world they confirmed the toxic truth I'd spent my entire life trying to disprove. This was the final, undeniable proof. They didn't just disapprove of my choices, they despised my existence. The choice was simple: collapse or rise. I felt a surge of cold, powerful rage. The crying Michelle was dead. The blood rushed from my face, but instead of tears, I felt a terrifying clarity. This wasn't pain, this was the truth finally delivered. I stood up slowly, deliberately. The crying daughter died right then, replaced by a woman with nothing left to lose. I picked up my glass. The whole room held its breath. I met my father's sneering eyes and offered my own toast. To Honesty, I said, my voice shockingly steady. To the end of a relationship where I was merely an accessory, not a daughter. And to the certainty that I am finally free. Harold looked genuinely shocked, realizing I wasn't going to collapse. I put down the glass. Consider this my resignation from the Harris family. My existence, which you despise, will no longer be your problem. I am cutting the cord permanently, financially and emotionally. My mother, Elizabeth, started to protest, but your career is useless. I cut her off. On the contrary, Mother, I have secured a position at the Bowman Institute in Seattle, a place that values passion, not inherited money. I start next month. Farewell. I didn't wait for their response. I simply walked. Every step away from that table was a step toward my own sovereignty. I left the restaurant, leaving them frozen in a state of shock, shame, and utterly irrelevant anger. That night, I didn't cry. I smiled. I didn't lose my family, I simply ended a lifetime of slavery. The hatred I felt wasn't overwhelming, it was focused. It gave me a new purpose: revenge. Not for the words, but for the lost years. The day after graduation, Evelyn's lawyer called. She hadn't just given me emotional support, she had left me a legacy and a secret. This wasn't just money. This was the perfect, elegant weapon to finally dismantle the Harris family brand that had crushed me. Evelyn had quietly acquired the Harris family's main investment property over the years, and she had left it not to Harold but to me. This property was the linchpin of my father's entire financial reputation, the asset they used as collateral for everything. Evelyn knew their weakness. She gave me the power to squeeze them where it hurt most, their public facade and their finances. I didn't want their money, I wanted their humiliation. And I had the perfect plan to give them exactly what they deserved. 3 years. 3 years in Seattle, building my own empire, erasing their echo. Now the strategic retreat was over. It was time for the tactical strike. I returned to Boston, not as a desperate daughter, but as the owner of the Harris family's most valuable asset. I chose the stage perfectly, the annual Harris Foundation Charity Gala. This wasn't charity, it was the annual coronation of their social prestige. It was the ultimate platform for the Harris brand, where every society page reporter and influential friend would be watching. I made my entrance not with applause, but with shocked, paralyzing silence. I was there, looking nothing like the useless tour guide they had scorned. My parents saw me first. Harold's wine glass actually froze midair. Elizabeth's smile, their most valuable asset, vanished. I walked right up to their table and offered a perfectly polite, public greeting. It was the calm before the storm, a polite setup for the upcoming demolition. Mother, Father, how wonderful to see you. I hope the Foundation's affairs are as prosperous as ever. The double meaning was sharp, but only for them. The MC began the main announcement, the annual State of the Foundation report. This was my moment. I subtly moved closer to the microphone. My father whispered, "What are you doing?" I smiled sweetly. "Just securing the collateral, Harold." I took the mic, and the room went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear the annual Foundation report. But first, a small amendment regarding the Harris building ownership." Harold's face was white. He knew. As the legal owner of this foundational asset, I must announce, the Foundation's lease is terminated. The silence exploded into chaos. I heard gasps, whispers of the Harris building. Harold rushed the stage, his perfect veneer completely shattered. He screamed, "Michelle, this is my mother's legacy." I simply replied, "No, Harold. This is my legacy now." I handed the MC the official termination letter. "I believe you have until the end of the fiscal quarter to vacate. Enjoy the rest of your gala." Their humiliation was absolute, delivered to their entire social circle. This was just the first strike in taking back the dignity they stole. I left Boston again, satisfied but not finished. The public brand was wounded, but the personal score was next. Harold's financial collapse was satisfying, but it was purely tactical. My next move had to be personal. It had to target the one person who weaponized my self-worth, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Harris built her entire identity on a foundation of perfect, glittering appearances. I knew exactly where to strike. I crashed the annual Boston Women's League luncheon. Elizabeth was there, parading her notorious, massive diamond necklace, her crown jewel of social standing. That necklace was her proof of status, the thing she'd wear while telling me I was too plain to matter. I approached the table with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Mother," I cooed, kissing the air next to her cheek. "That necklace is just as bold as ever." I subtly let my fingers graze the pendant. My years in tourism gave me an eye for authenticity, and I knew immediately it was a fake. I called over my friend, a renowned gemologist from the Bowman Institute, making sure the table listened. "Darling, could you just settle a small intellectual debate for us?" Elizabeth started to panic, but my friend, being meticulous, only saw a professional puzzle. "I'm sure Mrs. Harris's diamond is flawless." My friend used a tiny light pen. The gemologist's eyes widened, her professional composure breaking. She stammered, It's beautifully cut, but it's laboratory grown." A gasp went around the room. I leaned into Elizabeth. "A fake, Mother? Just like your love for me?" I then addressed the whole room. "Mrs. Harris here taught me that worth is all about appearance. Well, dear Mother, your most cherished possession, the core of your status, is a lie." The whispers turned to outright, delighted gossip. Elizabeth's foundation of self-importance was cracking in front of her peers. Her face, usually controlled, collapsed into raw despair. Her eyes weren't crying about the diamond, they were crying about the loss of her perfect illusion. I gave her a taste of the devaluation she had subjected me to for 30 years. Her priceless facade was publicly dismantled. I turned and walked out, leaving Elizabeth to the mercy of her own society. I hadn't taken her life, I had taken her worth. The final, cold act of revenge was complete. I gave her dishonesty and humiliation, the only language she ever spoke fluently. The public humiliation of Harold and Elizabeth quickly led to the expected financial and social downfall. I knew the call would come. Harold's voice, usually a weapon of prestige, was now strained, desperate. He was calling the daughter he had wished was never born. "Michelle, please. The bank is calling the loan. We need the Harris building back. We've lost everything. Your mother is hysterical. Just stop." He tried to use the word family, but the word rotted on his tongue. He was begging, utterly devoid of the power he once held. I let him beg for a full minute. Then, I cut him off, my voice a blade of ice. "You taught me that love is leverage, Harold. I'm just using the lesson you instilled. You taught me to destroy the competition. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it to take back my peace." I recited the words he said at the restaurant, word for word. "I choose my own peace over your perpetual approval. And frankly, Harold, I wish you were never born to me." The phone line went silent. I had delivered the emotional counterpunch 30 years in the making. The score was settled. Harold's empire collapsed swiftly. The Harris building was sold. The foundation was dissolved in scandal. The family name was tainted with dishonesty and failure. They lost the money and the status, the only two things they ever truly valued. They became the ghosts of the society they once ruled. Evelyn hadn't just left me money, she had left me justice. She knew the truth about her son and gave me the tool to reclaim my life. The final act of love was giving me the power to destroy their control. I used her money to buy my freedom. Today I lead tours, not of history, but of the present, showing people the beauty of the world. I don't need prestige, I need connection. The pain of the past is fuel for the future. I escaped the Harris brand, and in the process I found my true self. This is the story of how I stopped trying to earn their love and started working on the ultimate family revenge, a successful, happy life. The destruction was complete. I had won the war, but I was too exhausted to celebrate. The immediate aftermath wasn't relief, it was a profound, terrifying stillness. I had spent my entire life planning my escape and my revenge. Now, I had nothing left to fight but the silence. Nights alone became a new crisis. The memories of rejection haunted me, twisting into nightmares. I'd wake up hearing Elizabeth's voice, "You'll never be loved." My freedom felt fragile. The house was beautiful, the job was rewarding, but I was paralyzed by the fear of being truly, permanently unlovable. I pushed people away. If my own parents couldn't love me, how could anyone else? I built walls, choosing isolation over the risk of new rejection. I was punishing myself for a crime I didn't commit, unconsciously validating Harold and Elizabeth's harsh verdict. I closed my eyes and focused on Evelyn's memory. Her love was unconditional. She didn't love me if I succeeded, she loved me because I persisted. I finally understood. The Harris brand of love was the lie. Evelyn's simple kindness was the truth. I didn't need their love, I needed to accept my own worth. The turning point was accepting the harsh realization I might never be loved by them, and that was okay. Their inability to love me was their failure, not mine. I had to stop apologizing for my existence. I had to stop comparing my life to the toxic metrics of the Harris family. I vowed never again would I beg, never again would I justify my dreams. I had earned my place through hard work and integrity. I sent the cease and desist order, a firm boundary. The relationship was over. My life was finally and truly mine. Of course, the retaliatory family blame came swiftly. Harold and Elizabeth told relatives and reporters that I was ungrateful and mentally unstable. They tried to control the narrative one last time, to turn their own toxic behavior into my moral failing. I didn't even bother to respond. The whispers didn't matter, because the new people in my life spoke louder. Friends, colleagues, mentors, they stepped in as my real family. Their belief in my worth, their unconditional support, finally healed the void left by my parents' absence. In Seattle, I built a life based on my own values. My home was a sanctuary filled with peace. My career was built on genuine passion, not pretense. My life was rich, not because of a bank balance, but because of the respect and fulfillment I found daily. The holidays passed with silence. Christmas, my birthday, distance became the new normal, and I no longer feared it. The absence of toxicity is peace. I had finally accepted that their rejection was the necessary price for my liberation. The emotional cord wasn't just cut, it was cauterized. I found a new, profound purpose, mentoring students who felt unseen or were forced into careers they hated. I gave them what I had been denied, unconditional belief. Every student I helped was a small victory over the old narrative. It was my way of honoring Evelyn's legacy of kindness. The truth is simple. Family isn't blood. It's who shows up. It's who believes in you when you're lost. It's who stands by your worth. I found my family, built my empire, and paid my debt. My life is the ultimate family revenge. If you've ever faced rejection from those who should love you, remember this. You have the choice to walk away and build your own life. Share your strength, inspire others, and never let anyone else define your self-worth. Be your own anchor. Every step forward was a tribute to the woman who first saw my light. The Harris family's final attempt to reach out, months later, was easily dismissed. A forwarded email from a lawyer, quickly archived. They tried to insert themselves back into my success, claiming they had always supported the idea of my independence. I laughed. Their attempts at reconciliation were never about love. They were about minimizing their public shame. But their shame no longer had any power over me. My healing was complete, my liberation total. The moment I hung up on Harold, I expected guilt or fear. Instead, I felt a physical, sudden lightness. The 20-year-old weight of their disapproval had vanished. I hadn't broken, I was finally free. Their cruelty, paradoxically, had given me the ultimate gift, release. The intense cruelty of their final words, "We wish you were never born," acted like a surgeon's scalpel. It cut away the last sliver of hope I clung to. The pain turned into unmistakable clarity. I was never going to get their love. I needed to build a life where their love was unnecessary. But relief wasn't total. Nights alone, the void they left behind felt vast. Could I truly rebuild without the foundational love of a family? The isolation was a new crisis. I was financially independent and successful, yet still haunted by the primal fear of being truly alone. I had to reorient my internal compass. It couldn't point toward Boston anymore. It had to point toward self-worth and genuine connection. I started small, volunteering, accepting coffee invitations. Tiny steps that reinforce the truth. My value exists independent of them. I made a vow I would stop trying to earn their love and start working on the ultimate family revenge, a successful, happy life. I would become everything they said I could not be. My revenge wasn't the collapse of their company, it was the unbreakable building of my own soul. I chose to love myself. I had everything I dreamed of, the Bowman Institute title, the Seattle skyline view. But success is a cold bed when you sleep alone. The revenge was sweet, but the victory was hollow. The void left by my parents' absence wasn't filled by money or prestige. The need for unconditional love was still raw. The trauma didn't end with the lawsuit. It played on loop every night. I'd wake up hearing Elizabeth's sneer, "Your passion is useless. You are useless." I was physically safe, but mentally, I was still the 20-year-old girl, begging for a single, genuine smile from her father. I pushed people away. If the two people genetically obligated to love me couldn't, how could a stranger? I chose isolation over the risk of new rejection. I unconsciously validated Harold and Elizabeth's verdict. I was permanently unworthy of deep, lasting connection. Holidays were the worst. The silence was deafening. Every family photo shared online by my distant relatives was a cruel reminder I was the permanent outsider. I sat down alone to eat, and that's when it hit me. The cost of my freedom was the permanent loss of belonging. I stared into the mirror. The only way out was through. The harsh, undeniable truth was, I will never be loved by them. And I had to choose to be okay with that. Their failure to love me was theirs, not mine. I had to stop apologizing for my existence and start building my own validation. I found an old note from Evelyn, "You are enough, darling, more than enough." She loved me for my kindness and my tenacity, not my ability to please Harold. Her belief was the blueprint for my true self. I had to stop measuring my worth with the yardstick of a family that only measured greed and control. I made the ultimate vow I would never beg for approval again. I had earned my place through hard work and genuine integrity. I could not control their love, but I could absolutely love myself. And that was the only validation I would ever need. I contacted my lawyer and requested a final, legally binding cease and desist order. No calls, no emails, no attempts at contact. The relationship wasn't just over, it was permanently terminated. My freedom was absolute. I had bought my peace at a steep, necessary price. The expected family blame hit the society pages. I was ungrateful, mentally unstable, and used Evelyn's money to punish good people. Their efforts to control the narrative were pathetic. I didn't feel rage, I felt pity. Their poison no longer touched me. The new people in my life were my foundation. They believed in my character and my integrity. They were the family I chose. Their unconditional support and genuine respect finally filled the gaps left by a lifetime of parental manipulation and cruelty. I found my true purpose in mentoring. I gave students who felt unseen the validation I craved. It was the best way to honor Evelyn's legacy of kindness. I built my life not on revenge, but on joy, authenticity, and profound inner peace. My story was finally mine. I forced myself to face the mirror, not the flawless reflection Elizabeth demanded, but the real me, with all the scars and the resolve. The final, most painful realization was this: I will never be loved by them. And the terrifying truth: I had to be okay with it. I understood the toxic reality. Their inability to love me was their failure to be human. It wasn't because I wasn't enough, it was because they were emotionally bankrupt. I finally stopped internalizing their cruelty. I stopped being the scapegoat. The verdict was final. I was innocent. I stopped apologizing for my existence. I stopped comparing my successful career to the toxic, gilded cage they wanted for me. I had to dismantle the last chain, the inner critic that sounded exactly like Elizabeth. The critic was fired. I made the ultimate vow I would no longer measure my worth by their opinion. I had earned my place through hard work, integrity, and genuine talent. My life became a testament to my own strength. I could not control their love, but I could absolutely love myself. Evelyn's love was the only true validation I ever received. Her money was a tool, but her unconditional belief was the actual inheritance. She showed me that my passion and my kindness were more than enough. I used her gift to destroy their control, then used her memory to rebuild my soul. The silence on the holidays used to terrify me. Now the silence is peace. It's the absence of their toxicity. It's the sound of my own freedom. I bought my liberation at the steep price of accepting permanent isolation from my blood family. It was the best investment I ever made. My new mission is to give others what I craved: unconditional belief. I found my purpose in mentoring the unseen, the underestimated. I escaped the Harris brand, and in doing so, I created the Michelle brand, built on truth, tenacity, and kindness. My emotional independence required a legal finality. I formally filed the cease and desist order. No calls, no mail, no attempts at contact, period. The relationship wasn't just over, it was permanently terminated. I had bought my peace at a steep, but absolutely necessary, price. Harold and Elizabeth launched their final, desperate counterattack. They told everyone I was ungrateful and mentally unstable. blaming me for their own downfall. They tried to rewrite the narrative one last time to turn their toxic parenting into my moral failure. But their poison no longer had a receptor in my soul. I didn't engage. I didn't defend myself. I simply detached. Their drama was their prison. My peace was my priority. The strength wasn't in the fight. It was in the choice to walk away and leave them shouting in the empty hall of their ruined reputation. The whispers didn't matter, because the people in my life spoke louder. My friends, colleagues, and mentors became the family I chose. They believed in my character and integrity, not my bank balance or my last name. Their genuine love finally filled the void. I defined my own worth. It wasn't in their approval or a diamond necklace. It was in the fulfillment I found in my work. Every student I mentored, every tour I led, was a victory over the old narrative. I was becoming the person Evelyn knew I could be. The emotional cord was cut. Holidays passed in silence, and that silence was pure bliss. Distance was no longer a fear. It was a shield of peace. Their attempts at reaching out months later, through lawyers, were met with the archived cease and desist. They no longer existed in my world. My life's purpose is now to give what I was denied, unconditional belief. I honor Evelyn's memory by sharing kindness, not by seeking revenge. I transformed the pain into purpose. The ultimate revenge wasn't their downfall, it was my successful, happy, and meaningful life. Remember this, family isn't blood. It's the people who show up, who believe in you, who validate your true worth, not the price of your status. I escaped the toxic Harris brand. I am Michelle Harris, and this is the beginning of my life. If you've ever felt devalued, remember that you choose your own worth. Build your life on your terms. Share your strength and be your own hero. After their business collapsed, Harold and Elizabeth launched their final, most desperate attack, a public smear campaign. They tried to regain control of the only asset left, the narrative. They couldn't face the truth, so they tried to bury it under a mountain of lies and victimhood. They claimed I was ungrateful, mentally unstable, and had betrayed the family name using Evelyn's money. The central theme, I was the villain. They spun their toxic behavior, a lifetime of emotional neglect, into my moral failing. It was pathetic, yet predictably Harris. Years ago, this would have sent me into a spiral of rage and self-doubt. Now I felt nothing. Their poison no longer had a hold on me. The true measure of my healing was not my success, but my ability to remain unmoved by their attempts to inflict pain. I didn't defend myself publicly. I didn't engage in their spectacle. My answer was the cease and desist order, a boundary that was absolute. The only power I gave them was the satisfaction of watching them destroy themselves. I chose to walk away and let them shout into the void. I realized I didn't hate them, I felt pity. They lost everything, not because of me, but because they built their empire on greed, not love. Their toxicity was their inheritance. They were slaves to the Harris brand they had forced upon me. And I was finally free. While they screamed into the papers, I built my real family. My friends and mentors provided the unconditional support I was denied by blood. They validated my character, my talent, and my integrity, the things the Harris family never saw and never valued. My self-worth was no longer tied to their approval or their money. It was tied to my ability to achieve, to connect, and to thrive on my own terms. I had found a richer currency than prestige, the currency of genuine respect and inner peace. Every step forward was a tribute to Evelyn. She didn't just give me the tool for revenge, she gave me the blueprint for a loving, meaningful life. The ultimate revenge wasn't the collapse of their company, it was the unbreakable building of my own happiness. I found my true calling in mentoring those who felt unseen. I gave them the validation I was denied. I turned my trauma into a source of light for others. My life is no longer about them. It's about making connections, fostering kindness, and living authentically. This is my story of family revenge. Not the kind that involves bloodshed or prison, but the kind that involves radical self-acceptance and ultimate liberation. I am Michelle Harris, and my greatest victory was choosing myself over the brand they tried to force upon me. I never saw Harold or Elizabeth again. The layers of legal protection ensured that. The Harris building was taken over by a new firm, and the family name faded from the headlines, replaced by new scandals and new millionaires. They lost the stage, and without the audience, their performance meant nothing. Their final attempts at reconciliation, usually a quick email from their lawyer asking if I'd consider mediation now that their funds were low, were instantly archived. They wanted to use my success to save their remaining reputation, a manipulation so transparent it barely registered. I felt a fleeting sense of sorrow for the lost potential of a real relationship, but it quickly dissolved into firm gratitude for my freedom. The greatest lesson I learned was that you don't fight fire with fire, you fight it with boundaries and detachment. My peace is not negotiable. My happiness is not conditional on anyone's approval, especially those who once tried to define me by my flaws. Today, my life is a direct result of choosing kindness over cruelty and authenticity over performance. My success is my own, my family is my own, and my story is a message you can always walk away and win. Don't let their fear become your cage. Build your own legacy, one based on the values you hold dear. Be your own anchor. If this story resonated with you, like and subscribe, and share in the comments how you reclaimed your own story. The healing began when I finally let my guard down. The people I met in Seattle, my colleagues, my neighbors, my friends, became my true anchor. They showed up. They listened without judgment. They gave me the unconditional support that blood had failed to provide. My mentors at the Bowman Institute didn't care about the Harris family name. They saw my tenacity, my talent, and my genuine passion for cultural tourism. Their belief in my professional worth slowly eroded the decades of emotional abuse that told me my path was useless. The holidays were no longer solitary agony. My friends threw small dinners. The table was simple, but it was filled with genuine laughter and true belonging. They proved that family isn't blood, it's who shows up. They were the antidote to the Harris brand of cruelty. Healing wasn't a sudden event. It was a slow, deliberate process, fueled by the kindness of strangers turned family. Their support gave me the courage to forgive myself. I stopped internalizing the shame. I started to believe that I was worthy of the peace and joy I was finally experiencing. My chosen family understood Evelyn's importance. Her legacy wasn't just money, it was the blueprint for unconditional love that they now helped me follow. I honored Evelyn's memory by living a life built on authenticity and kindness, not the Harris's expectations. They didn't just support me personally, they validated my life choices professionally. Their respect was the richest currency I had ever earned. This community proved that my life was significant, even without the paternalistic stamp of the Harris name. I no longer feared the silence or the isolation. My peace was non-negotiable. I became my own anchor, strong enough to withstand any future attack. I had found the ultimate defense, an unbreakable internal sense of self-worth. My recovery wasn't about running away. It was about running toward people who saw my light. If you're rebuilding, remember this: you choose your family. Surround yourself with voices that whisper worth, not those that shout shame. They are your true legacy. Seattle wasn't just a location, it was a sanctuary. My apartment, once a sterile symbol of success, became a home filled with peace and genuine comfort. I built my life on my own values, authenticity, kindness, and hard-earned respect, not pretense. My career at the Bowman Institute was my true stage. I wasn't just successful, I was fulfilled. I used my talent for the purpose I loved. Every successful project was a quiet victory over Harold's dismissal that my passion was a childish hobby. My most profound joy came from mentoring students who felt unseen, who faced similar pressure from their own families. I gave them what I craved, unconditional belief. I turned my personal trauma into a source of light and guidance. My friends didn't applaud my bank account, they applauded my heart and my ethics. Their acceptance was the medicine that healed the deepest wounds. family isn't blood. It's the people who choose you when you have nothing to offer but your true self. Evelyn's final wish wasn't just revenge, it was for my happiness. I honored her legacy by building a life based on her kindness, not the Harris's cruelty. I used her gift to destroy the old world, and her love to create a better, stronger new one. The ultimate revenge was not their downfall, it was the realization that I was whole without them. Their judgment became utterly irrelevant. My successful, peaceful, and authentic life is the ultimate family revenge. It is the trophy I never need to display. I finally and completely chose myself. I stopped begging for approval. I stopped punishing myself. I embraced radical self-acceptance. My greatest liberation was the ability to look at my life and say, "This is enough. I am enough." The few faint attempts they made to contact me were archived immediately. They were noise I no longer heard. My peace was absolute. Their prison was built on control. My freedom was built on detachment. The emotional cord was not just cut, it was cauterized. To anyone facing rejection, remember, you choose your own ending. Your worth is not a birthright, it is your choice to define. Walk away from toxicity and build a life so full of joy, it becomes your greatest revolution. Every day, I choose authenticity. I choose kindness. I choose the path that Harold and Elizabeth said was impossible for me. They tried to confine me to the gilded cage of corporate law and social performance. But the truth is, the Harris family never had any real power over me, only the power I mistakenly gave them through my longing for their love. The moment I surrendered that longing was the moment I became truly unstoppable. That is the secret to winning any family battle. Stop playing their game. I realized the world is vast and full of people who are ready to love and support you, regardless of your history. My life in Seattle is my masterpiece. It is built on genuine connection, not transactional relationships. My colleagues and friends are not assets to be leveraged. They are human beings who see me fully. I share my vulnerability and they share theirs. That mutual respect is the true inheritance I earned. The Harris Empire may still be mentioned in history books, but my legacy, the one I cherish, is the ripple effect of kindness I create every day through my mentoring and my work. That is the legacy that truly matters. The loudest sound in my new life was the silence of my phone on holidays. No forced calls. No manipulative messages. The cessation of toxicity was a physical relief. The silence used to be a wound, now it was a shield of peace. I no longer feared the isolation. After the company collapsed, the distant relatives, sensing weakness, tried to reach out. They didn't miss me, they missed the Harris family prestige and potential connections. Their contact was transactional, always with an underlying hope to glean some information or a financial favor. I kept the wall up. Harold and Elizabeth, facing mounting financial pressure, sent a final, desperate plea for mediation, a chance for them to use my name to salvage their debt. I simply forwarded the email to my lawyer with one word: archived. Their control over my life was officially zero. The Harris Empire, built on pretense and cruelty, finally dissolved. The building was renamed. The toxic brand was gone. It was a victory, not because of joy, but because it signified absolute closure. I was finally disconnected from their failure. I learned the most powerful defense against toxicity: radical detachment. Their attempts to hurt me were simply facts on a screen, not feelings in my heart. My emotional state was no longer conditional on their approval or disapproval. I had achieved emotional sovereignty. My new identity was forged by my choices, my work, and the people I chose to trust. I was no longer Michelle Harris, the heiress, I was Dr. Michelle Harris, the expert. This was the true legacy of Evelyn, the freedom to define myself by my character, not my blood. The deepest wounds aren't caused by a single trauma, but by the slow poison of waiting for love that never comes. The final lesson: stop waiting. My healing wasn't the revenge, it was the radical acceptance that their failure to love me was never my fault. My life is no longer about proving them wrong. It's about proving myself right, about living a life so full of joy and purpose that the past has no shadow. I am the final word. My peace is the ultimate family revenge. The old ties are not just cooled, they are frozen solid. I channel all the energy I once spent seeking their approval into serving my new community. I mentor, I volunteer, I give back. That feeling of genuine contribution is a high no amount of Harris prestige could ever replicate. Harold and Elizabeth's entire identity was built on what they owned. Mine is built on what I give. That fundamental difference is why I'm free and they are not. My phone doesn't ring with their names, but it does ring with calls from friends asking about my well-being, students thanking me for guidance, and colleagues to Tim. These are the voices that matter. These are the ties that bind me not to a toxic past, but to a fulfilling future. My freedom is not a fluke. It's a meticulously crafted fortress built with hard boundaries and self-respect. I learned that their cruelty wasn't personal. It was just their nature. And you don't argue with a storm, you build a sturdier house. In the quiet of my new life, I allowed genuine connection. I met Ben, a landscape architect, no wealth, no prestige, just kindness and authenticity. He wasn't attracted to the Harris brand, he saw Michelle, the flawed, resilient woman. It was revolutionary. For the first time, I experienced love without conditions. Ben didn't try to fix me, he simply celebrated my strength and my career choices. He validated my worth, not by providing status, but by providing mutual respect and genuine affection. Evelyn gave me the financial freedom to choose my path. Ben gave me the emotional freedom to walk it without apology. I realized my life was defined by the love I found and the love I chose to give, not the family I escaped. The ultimate act of self-liberation, I formally dropped Harris from my professional name. I became Dr. Michelle Evans, taking Evelyn's maiden name. The toxic brand was officially expunged. I was building a new legacy on a foundation of truth and self-respect. I discovered true wealth wasn't in bank accounts, it was in the abundance of my peace. The silence from the Harris family was my most valuable possession. My days were filled with purpose, my evenings with love. This life was the only luxury I ever needed. My focus shifted completely. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about service and connection. I found my revolution in mentorship. I used my painful past not as a burden, but as a tool for empathy to help others break their own chains. Every decision, every boundary, every choice of friend or partner was mine. I had seized full control of my narrative. The only inheritance that truly mattered was the right to choose my own happiness. And I chose it every single day. You've seen the revenge, but the real lesson is this: the revenge wasn't the collapse of their empire. That was a consequence. The true victory was the unbreakable peace I built for myself. It was choosing my own worth over their toxic approval. If you come from a toxic family, your greatest responsibility is to break the cycle. Don't let their cruelty become your inheritance for the next generation. Your healing is a revolution. Your boundaries are an act of self-love. Your distance is your self-preservation. Stop letting people who fail to love you define who you are. Define yourself by your character, your integrity, and the kindness you choose to give. Your worth is not a birthright tied to a last name. It is an inherent truth that you simply have to accept. You have the power to curate your life. Find the people who see your light, who celebrate your success, and who value your presence. Family is a choice. Surround yourself with voices that whisper worth, not those that shout shame. Build your chosen tribe. My life is the final word on the Harris legacy. It's a life built on self-love, purpose, and profound peace. That is the one thing they could never buy, control, or destroy. I chose to be happy. I chose to be free. And that is the most beautiful, powerful revenge of all. If this story resonated with you, I want you to know you're not alone. Your pain is valid, but it doesn't have to be your whole story. You can rewrite your ending right now. The power is in your hands. Start small, set one boundary today. Stop apologizing for who you are. Hit that like button if you're choosing yourself today. You've witnessed my journey from heiress to hostage and finally to self-liberated woman. Now, it's your turn. Your story doesn't end with their script. If you are carrying the weight of familial trauma, you have the power to put it down. The revolution starts now. Lesson 1: Boundaries are non-negotiable. My cease and desist wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of profound self-preservation. You must defend your peace fiercely. You teach people how to treat you. If they breach your boundaries, you must be prepared to enforce the consequences. Lesson 2: Family is chosen. Blood ties are meaningless without kindness and respect. Seek out the voices that whisper worth, not those that shout shame. Build your tribe on mutual respect and unconditional love. They are your safety net. Lesson 3: The ultimate revenge is a life well lived. Their downfall was just a footnote. My peaceful, authentic life is the final, undeniable victory. Stop wasting energy proving them wrong. Start building a life that proves yourself right. Lesson 4: Healing is radical acceptance. Accept that their failure to love you was never your fault. It was their limitation, not your worth. You cannot fight their nature. You can only choose to stop internalizing their shame. Lesson 5: Define your own worth. Your value is inherent and is tied to your character, not your last name or your financial status. Don't seek validation from the source of your pain. Seek it in your integrity, your work, and your chosen relationships. Your journey to self-liberation starts right now. Take the courage, use the lessons, and know that you are worth the fight. Don't just watch this story, live your own revolution. The best revenge is a life well lived. Like and subscribe if you found strength here. Share your story in the comments below.